Bonjour mesdames et messieurs. In this episode, I invite you to come with me in Joshua Tree Park and shoot the Milky Way. Bonjour mesdames et messieurs, my name is Serge Ramely. I am a French photographer living in the incroyable city of Paris, France, and the very incredible city of Los Angeles, California. And I have the privilege to make 2 tutorials per week. Click here if you want to get the raw file of this episode. Now this episode has got at least 10 free raw files of the Milky Way, really cool photos shot with the Sony A7S. So all you have to do is subscribe to my daily newsletter where you're going to get tons of promotion on my courses and news from me every day. Or you can click here to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In last episode, I showed you how to change the hair color of my lovely daughter Marine. This is some of the final results. This week, I was invited by a friend photographer named Alex Zahor from Virtual Here Studios. He's an amazing real estate photographer. He shoots really good quality images and he also does a lot of videos using drones. He's one of the most talented interior design photographers I've seen. If you want to contact him, check out his website at virtualherestudios.com or you will get the link below the description of this video. All right, so I'm going to take you to Joshua Tree and we're going to go shoot the Milky Way. Come with me if you want to live. Bonjour mesdames et messieurs. So we are here in the middle of the night in Joshua Tree, California. We're in the month of July, which is really good to see the stars. And we are on a new moon, meaning there is not much moon going. And so we can really see the stars and the Milky Way like I've never seen before. And we're going to shoot some photos and see how we can get the best, the most interesting composition. Now, one thing you need to realize when you're shooting in the middle of the night, with all the stars, you're going to get amazing background. Okay, there's a lot of rocks all around us, so it's going to be an amazing middle ground, but we need to find something that's nice in the foreground. Maybe using rocks to make like little formation, little frame in the frame, or we're going to be playing also with people holding up lights toward the Milky Way and doing multiple exposures with lighting the rocks. And so in Photoshop, I will be able to blend the different exposures and get the right photo, which is really important. All right, so now we're just going to play around and try to find a nice composition, something with a good foreground, a good middle ground, and a good background, and then do all the retouching in Photoshop, first Lightroom and then Photoshop to blend the panoramas. I wanted to have a bigger lens and actually rendered one, but it was the wrong lens, so I'm going to do everything with a 24mm, which is not so bad, because if you have a very wide angles, when you have a lot of rocks, the rocks become huge and the stars are really far away, very small. So by taking different photos, like 1, 2, 3, 4 photos like I'm going to be doing, I get something which is sometimes more natural, less wide angle effects, which is what I'm going for. So mesdames et messieurs, let's start some shooting. All right, so I'm back in my studio with the shots that we got from Joshua Tree, and I'm really happy to share with you some of the best photos, at least a couple I like the most that I got from this trip, and a few tips and tricks along the way. 2 things before we get started. Make sure you are in a non-light polluted area. And the way to do that, you go on Google Maps and you type light pollution light map for your area. Like, so I typed pollution map Los Angeles. And I found this website called cleardarksky.com. I'll put the link in the description of the video. And you can see here in red or very warm color is things which are very polluted in terms of light, and anything which is black is not polluted. I'm in Los Angeles right now, and the closest that was non-polluted was the Joshua Tree National Park. This is why we went there, plus you got the nice rocks as the foreground element. The other thing you need to watch for is the moon phase. Just type moon phase for your area, and there is basically new moon, first quarter, full moon, third quarter. The idea is you want to go for new moon. New moon means the moon is not visible. Because it's not visible, the rest of the stars are going to be a lot more visible. And you can see for this part of the Earth where I'm in, most of the new moons are around, like here in July it's on the 15th, in August it's on the 14th, in September it's on the 12th, October on the 12th, November on the 11th. So just make sure you go, roughly in the middle of the month here. and then it, in the first part of the year, it was more like around the 20s. But you just Google moon phase in your area. So that's the first one I wanted to show you. As I explained in the introduction, it's easy to find a good background because the stars are everywhere and it's beautiful. The Milky Way, though, is not everywhere. The Milky Way you can see is here. It's not everywhere. It's moving pretty fast, actually. And so I had this idea of doing a frame in the frame with rocks. So here you have rocks around, and it's not so bad. This one I shot at 20 seconds at f4 at 3200. And then the next one, which is basically the same framing, the only difference is I asked Alex, who is been helping me on this trip, to light the foreground with his iPhone. He just opened up his iPhone, the light, and then he just gave a little sweep of light on the foreground as was shooting this. So so I get more detail in his rocks if I need to. Now, two things I want to talk about shooting that's interesting. This was shot at 13 seconds and 6,400, and this was shot at 20 seconds at 3,200. So this, let me take both, and I'm going to press C on the C, Shift Tab, so you can see both. So on my right, we have 13-second exposure, and on my left, we have 20-second exposure. So let's zoom in on the exact same spot and see the difference. Here you got a higher ISO, but a slower shutter speed. This is a shorter ISO, but a longer exposure, 20 seconds instead of 13. Now, it's not a huge difference, to be honest, but if you look at the star trails, because the stars are moving pretty fast, they are slightly longer than this one. Look on this star trail, they become a bit more blurry on this one because of the 20 second. So I thought it was more interesting to go to 13 second, and you will see I ended up being at 10 second because I didn't want to get this effect of the star trails and stars coming a bit blurry. So I just wanted to show you that. Now this one is an interesting photo because I can blend both, but I want to show you some other things. Oh yes, I want to talk to you something very important about. At least that's my experience. This was my first time shooting this, about on what you focus. Basically, I was trying to focus on infinity and my stars were a little bit blurry. Let me show you this. I think this shot I shot on, and my camera was on infinity, or this one I think was on infinity, and they're slightly blurry, and the rocks are completely blurry because they're very close to my camera. So what I ended up doing is I asked for Alex to light up with his iPhone the rocks and the further away he could light up, and I tried to focus on these rocks here with a manual focus. I just tried to get this one sharp, and it turned out all right. The stars then looked much better than infinity. So it was like 20 meters instead of being infinity. So this is what I found worked the best for me. Okay, and so let's carry on, and I want to show you the ones we're going to be retouching. Okay, the first one I'm going to be retouching is this one, this photo. I was trying same thing, to make a frame in the frame with the rocks. This one I shot at 10 seconds now. So if you look at the stars at 10 seconds now, there is no more tail. They're like almost perfect, but I'm at 8,000 ISO. So it's a bit more noisy. Sorry, it's a bit more noisy than. Oh, this one's already retouched. The colors are not there. Let me reset it so you can see what I mean. Oh no, this is not. Oh, I changed the white balance. This is my white balance. I was on automatic white balance, and then I went on this one, which is probably shade or cool something. I changed my white balance there. Anyways, so I kind of like that white balance, just off the raw file. So I ended up shooting at 10 second f4 ISO 8000. Now that's with the Sony S7S, which is really good for noise. If I would have shot on like a 5D Mark III, I probably would have gone to 20 second f4 ISO 4000, something like that. So that's just because the way the Sony 7S handles the noise is probably one of the best camera in the world for that. So that's the thing. Now I was trying to get a photo of the rocks and the Milky Way, but I didn't like that composition because the Milky Way was actually much bigger than this, and we can only see half of it. So then I had the idea, why not do a pano? So I put my camera into portrait mode and took 1, 2, 3, 4 photos. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select all 4, I'm going to right click, photo merge, panorama, and use this beautiful new option that we have in Lightroom CC to create panoramas just within Lightroom. I'm always happy with that. And you see the result is we still get a very similar photo than this one, but we just get a bit more of the Milky Way. Let me show you. It's creating the panorama now. And the only reason I did this was to get a bit more of the Milky Way, because I saw the Milky Way was the star of the photo. And, you know, and because I was shooting at 24 millimeter, I should have probably, you know, have a wide angle lens, and that did not work out. I rented the wrong lens, or at least I didn't know how to use it. And plus, you know, with the Sony, I don't like to use so much the Metabone with Canon lenses, and the wider lens that there is for Sony now that's really made for it is a 1635, which I didn't have with me. Anyways, so that's the result of the pano. It's still a RAW file compared to this one. Let me show you with this one. I'm going to press C to compare both photos. You see, on my left is the pano. You see how much more I get of the Milky Way compared to this one, which is just one photo. And the great thing is with this new option in Lightroom, and I'm actually going to give you all this RAW file so you can see for yourself and, you know, have fun with it. Use it in your composites, you know. As long as you credit me for it, I'm fine with it. And as long as you don't sell it, I'm fine with it. So this is the final result. And now let's do some retouching. Let's see what happens when I open up the shadows. Not much is happening. So all it's going to do is bring a bit of details here, but a lot of noise. So I'd rather not. So I'm actually not even going to touch this. The highlights, I'm actually going to go the right way. I'm not retouching this as I would usually. I'm trying to get this little halo effect, which I really like. I'm going to do it even more with the whites. Maybe turn on the blacks a bit more. Add some clarity. On this one, I'm just adding clarity. And you see clarity already brings right away the Milky Way, which I really like. I love the white balance. Maybe add a little blue in the white balance, just a little bit of blue. Yeah, just a little tiny bit of blue in the white balance. I think I like that. And okay, let's take care of the noise because, my God, I'm at 8,000 ISO, so there is a lot of noise. So on this one, I'm not going to go crazy because the noise gets mixed up with the stars. What I am going to do is probably put the noise around 20, and then my sharpening around 80. And then I'm going to do my masking, holding the Alt key, and on my masking, I'm just trying to get some of the space here. Masking, I'm going to go light, something like this. But it's still pretty good at 8,000 ISO. We get a lot of stars. The noise actually acts like a small stars. Works out pretty well. It's going to print beautifully. Okay, I'm going to unable the profile correction. That's kind of cool. And I'm going to remove the chromatic aberration in case there is any. And I'm just about done. I just want the Milky Way to come out a bit more. So I'm going to take a brush and I'm just going to add a bit of exposure, a bit of clarity, and maybe a little bit of yellow and magenta, making sure the feather is 100%, flow and density a bit lower. And I'm just going to paint on the Milky Way here just so that it sort of sticks out a little bit more. You know, I'm just cheating here a little bit. Maybe not that much. Add a bit of clarity, not that much of brightness, just a little bit, you know, that it comes out a bit more before, after. Yeah, it's actually a lot too much. So you know what? One thing you can do, I'll give you a little trick. When you did a brush like this, you can press Alt on your brush and it becomes a big eraser. Make it big. And I'm just going to erase a little bit of it here. Or actually, you know, you can make even the flow go down, and I'm just going to erase a little bit of that brush so it's a bit less intense. Okay? Let me show you the before and the after. Yeah, I like that. Okay. That's done. Okay? So I'm going to give you that's a panorama of the Milky Way. That was the first project I want to show you. Let's carry on and I'm going to give you all this RAW files so you can try. All you have to do is subscribe to my daily newsletters. Okay, then next there was an arch. Right to my left there was a very nice arch, and it was actually another photographer trying to shoot it. So I took a few photos of it. Let me reset this one. I took a few photos, but these ones are not good because he was turning on too much light. Then this one, let me reset it. Also, I didn't like that one too much. Yeah, the arch didn't work so much for me because the Milky Way was not as visible there. It was actually not there. You could see some part of it, but it was not as visible as this side where it was really visible. Okay, now let's carry on. So what I wanted to do was the same concept of having, you know, basically a frame in the frame, but I wanted to get more details on the foreground. So what I did is I asked Alex to help me, you know, with his flash. He had a big flash, to light up the foreground. He actually did it. Honestly, it was too much. We should just use the iPhone. Any lamp you have, like the iPhone is perfect, you just use the iPhone to light up a little bit. This is way too much. So we took different shots. I put my camera on a tripod. That's the first shot where we really lit up the foreground. That's the second where there was nothing laid. This one was lit a little bit. Let me reset it. No, not that much. And then I started going up because I wanted to make a pano and I wanted to get some more of the Milky Way, which is here. Because I thought this was not enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually blend a couple of files, probably this file and this files together, but I'm going to prepare them first. I'm going to blend them, so I just want a bit of details and a bit of dodge and burn in the foreground. So how am I going to do that? Well, one thing I can do, and I like to try that, I'm going to go back to the photo that I really like, the one I just did, and I'm going to press Command-Shift-C to copy everything that I've done so far, except the cropping maybe, but the rest I really like. All we've done so far I really like on this photo. I'm going to press Command-Shift-V and to paste that. So that's my basic. So I know that my sharpening is done, my noise, the white balance is the one I like, and the brush stroke is not going to be perfect. But there is a new option that I really love in Lightroom CC. Is now if I go over, if I show select mask overlay, you see my brush stroke, I can move my brush stroke over to where the Milky Way is now. So that's something we didn't have before, and I can just use the eraser to erase the brush stroke here. Or let me just get the flow going. That's the flow of my eraser. And I'm just going to erase. Oh, let me take auto mask. Yeah, I'm just erasing that. So now the brush stroke is at the right place. It's just a little trick, but I could as well redo it. Okay, now I need to prepare that file because this is way too bright. You know how the eyes goes to the brightest part of the photo, and before I try blending this photo with this photo, but there's too much of a difference. I need to make them a bit closer. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a graded filter. I'm going to make a graded filter at the bottom. Okay, and I'm going to go to exposure so that everything comes to 0 except exposure, and I'm going to lower the exposure a lot. I'm going to lower, there's also like a sort of a yellow cast that I don't like on the rocks, so I'm going to lower the saturation so it comes more down to white. I'm going to add maybe a little bit of clarity. Why not? It could be cool to have a bit of clarity on the rocks. The problem is now that it's turning down my Milky Way. I don't want that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take, we have this new option in Lightroom CC where you can click on brush, and I can erase some of that graded filter so that it only affects the rock and not the Milky Way. And for this, you just need to click on brush, 1, 2, click on erase. I'm going to make the flow like around 70, and you see now there is a little minus. I can make it bigger, and I'm just going to erase what I'm doing. I don't want this brush effect to affect here the Milky Way. Okay, so let me show you before the graded filter, after the graded filter. It's really only affecting the rocks which is in the foreground. Okay, let me erase here a little bit maybe. Voila. I don't want to use the auto mask because sometimes the auto mask on this makes some very weird lines around the rocks. So that's not something I want to do. Okay, so that's cool, but it's not enough. It's still way too bright for me. I mean, it's better than the before. So I'm going to just redo another one. I'm just going to go new and make another graded filter. So make sure I'm on exposure, and I'm going to minus this. Voila. Maybe bring down the highlights. Okay, and same thing, I'm going to use the eraser. I'm going to go to brush, use the eraser to make sure that I only do that, that I don't do that on the Milky Way. Okay, that's good. That's good. That's a good start. Okay, now I'm going to take this retouching. So remember on this retouching, we copied and pasted the white balance. We copied and pasted, the sharpening, the lens correction. So it's good to go. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to select this photo and this photo, which is this photo is actually just the top of the Milky Way. And I'm going to click on synchronize, and I just want to turn off the local adjustment. I want to copy and paste everything but the local adjustment on this photo and this photo. So boom, voila, here I am. So this is like I'm going to use this photo to blend in, because I think this is still too bright, blending this, and then I'm going to use this for the top of the photo. You'll see in a second. So now all three photos are selected. I'm not using this because this photo is exactly the same than this one. It's not going to bring anything to the table. And this photo is not going to bring anything because I'm going to make what I call a manual panorama. So I'm going to use this, and this was the bottom, and this was the top. So I'm selecting all three, and now we have to do this in Photoshop. So I'm going to right click, edit, and open as layers in Photoshop. So I'm opening up as layers in Photoshop, and boom, boom, boom. What that's going to do is open one big Photoshop file with the three files open. And then I'm going to do some little Photoshop magic in it. Okay. So on top, we have the one with the rocks, and in the bottom, we have, behind, we have the one with the rocks, which are completely dark. And here is, we have the rest of the Milky Way. So I'm going to take the rest of the Milky Way and put it on top for now. And I'm going to turn it off. I don't need that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a mask, just a white mask. Take a black brush, maybe opacity around 20 or 30%. And I'm just going to brush to bring back a little bit of the background, especially here in front, so that we have a little mixture of, especially here at the bottom, I want to do like a little vignette effect. I just wanted a little bit of that. So I'm blending basically both of this exposure just with a brush. Simple, you know, I don't want too much highlights. I just want a bit of detail in this, you know, and I want the attention of the viewer to go here, not to go here. That is way too bright still for me. Okay. The problem is when you do it too much, you start having a little halo effect here, which I might have to correct at the end, which I'll show you. Okay, now I need to make this photo bigger. So I'm going to take the crop tool so that we can include the rest of the Milky Way. So I'm going to open this up and use the crop tool basically to make my canvas a bit bigger. Okay, now my canvas is bigger. I've got more space here, and I'm going to take my move tool, click on the Milky Way, and just bring it up. Bring it up. Okay. The problem is that it doesn't match because the Milky Way kind of moved. So I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I'm just gonna make it here with around here about. Try to find a motif that's similar on both. It's kind of hard because the motif is very random. I would say something like this. Don't want to have the exact same white balance, but we'll see if we can blend it. Okay, now I'm just gonna put a white mask. Take my brush that I had before, the black brush at 24 opacity, and I'm just gonna making it smaller. Let me undo that. Command Z, making it smaller or bigger, but just using, just being on the edge here. Okay, let's make it a bit stronger. I'm just gonna use the edge of the brush. So I'm brushing, what I'm doing is I'm brushing with black, and so it's blending both exposure. Okay, if you do something like this, well, you just make it smaller, press X, and then just bring this back in. Okay, and now we have an extension of the Milky Way. We got the rest, which is cool. Oops. Just gonna blend this a bit more. It's got a little bit of difference of white balance, but I think it makes a cool effect. Oops. Okay, let me just bring that back in. Voila. And then I'm gonna use the crop tool. Maybe I should have done a better job with the white balance, but it's kind of cool because it's so random, the sky. And anyway, I'm going to do a little double processing. And now I'm going to crop it. And now we've got the Milky Way. We can see some of, it makes something weird here, but it kind of looks nice anyway. See the before and after. It makes something, because the white balance is not exactly the same, even though I thinked it, but it's fine. I'm going to do a double processing on it to make something to correct that a little bit. So first, I need to take care of something. That's something that might happen when you blend different exposure. You see I've got a little white line here. So I'm going to press Command Alt Shift E to create a layer, taking into account all we've done so far. And then I'm just going to zoom in a lot, press S for the stamp tool. And then I'm just going to stamp, maybe lower the opacity of my stamp tool. I'm just going to click here and just using the edge, I'm stamping here to get that little halo out. Actually, the first time I did it, it was a lot stronger, and now it's almost not there. So it's kind of, I don't even know if you can see it on the screen, but in case that happens to you while you're using these files, oops, Command Z. I'm just, oh, by the way, I'm holding the Shift key. I'm sorry, I forgot to say that. I'm holding the Shift key. When you hold the Shift key, basically it draws a line of stamps from the last moment you were on. So, okay, now it's a little bit of a better job. That white line is out. It made it a bit blurry, but it's kind of fine. It works. It's working. I have less attention on it. Honestly, I think I would spend a bit more time on it, but I'm doing a live tutorial. Okay, so now I'm just going to go to File, Close. And you see this is like a mixed up of 3 photos. 2 photos of the background, you know, so that we get some details in the rocks, and 1 to get the whole Milky Way. One little trick I want to show you about retouching the Milky Way once the photo is imported back. I still want to do a little brush here. Oh, that's probably what happened, is the brush is different. Remember that brush I did where I added a bit of exposure, clarity, and well, let me just redo this one. So I'm going to add a bit of exposure, a little bit of warmth, a little bit of clarity. Okay, and I'm just going to brush here. Okay, so that it kind of sticks out, maybe a bit more clarity, so we can see the Milky Way pretty good. And then sometimes what I like to do is I'm maybe going to make the overall photo just a little, oh, close that, sorry. That was the brush. I added a bit of exposure on the brush, just make the overall photo a little bit brighter. And then I'm going to make a graded filter here, where I'm going to make it darker, just, you know, because the sky is always a bit darker and a little bit bluer. So I'm adding blue and darkness in the sky on the gradient. So it gives more dimension to the photo, because, you know, this is warm, this is cool, so it gives more depth to the sky. Maybe it's a bit too much. I'm going to lower the blue, but, you know, a little bit is kind of fine. And then let's do some final retouching, maybe add some whites, bring down some blacks, you know, to make it really pop. The shadows I'm not going to touch. The highlights, they pair. Oh, maybe I had a bit of highlights so that it really pops. Maybe lower the saturation a little bit or something like this. Yeah, that's one way to see it. Honestly, I don't like that blending too much. The first time I did it, I did a better job, but I think it's kind of cool. I don't think anybody can really notice it. It just looks like sort of the Milky Way there. But you get the idea. That's one technique. So yeah, the first time I did it, that's how it looked. So you see it was a bit less blending, and the second time I did it, this is how it looked. It's different. Every time I retouch the same photos, I get different results, because, you know, whether you push the sliders, they're very powerful. It's going to make, but, you know, I like this kind of photos. I think I'm going to make it just a little bit darker, actually. I mean, at this point, usually what I do, yeah, make it a little bit darker, and maybe actually not add some clarity, just something like this. At this point, what I probably would do is I would, you know, rest and, you know, come back and see it a bit later. But that's, I'm going to give it a 2 because I like this one. And there's one more project I want to show you, which I did, which I thought was really cool, because the problem I'm always trying to solve is how to get an interesting foreground. Now, in Joshua Park 3, there is this beautiful rocks. So then the next thing we did was trying to light it with a flash. It just has a little pop-up flash, you know, where I would take my 10-second exposure and I would say flash, and it would just give a little bit of flash. So he did that, you know, in the background here on these rocks. I mean, same concept, you know, and then I can blend all 3 exposures, but that's not what I want to show you. The last project I want to show you is this one. We had this idea. We had our buddy Dare Stevens there, and I asked him if he could climb up the rock, and I laid down very low so that he could turn on a light, and just like if he was lighting the Milky Way. Okay, and then so then I did a panorama. So that's the first photo. That's the second photo. Let me reset this one so you see it completely. Yeah, so that's the first photo. Let me reset it also. First photo and second photo. I'm gonna basically blend both exposure. Well, I'm gonna try to do it all in Lightroom. I'm gonna take this photo and just right click, photo merge, panorama, and let's see how good Lightroom is going to do jobs. And sometimes it doesn't work in Lightroom and I have to go to Photoshop. But this time it did a pretty decent job, I must say. So I'm just going to click merge. And it's very important when you shoot 24 millimeter to, do vertoramas, and it's just a different photo, and I think it's a cool effect. And now I'm gonna retouch it. So let's see if we can use some of the settings we did before, because I really like these settings that we did on this original photo, this one. So Command Shift C, I'm not gonna take the local adjustment, as we did last time. And this is still a raw file. This is one big raw file with this new option Lightroom CC, and we're gonna press Command V, and boom. Okay, well, funny because I think it's too blue now, so I'm gonna bring it back a little bit. Yeah, I kind of like that. Now this is way too much. The way this is led, this is way too much. So let's see if we can take a little brush and go to exposure, and maybe with a small flow and small density, we could bring this a little, maybe use the highlights, turn off the highlights. I just don't want so much attention here. I think it's a bit too much. Yeah. The problem is now I'm doing a halo here, so I have to basically zoom in, and I'm gonna use make the brush as an eraser and erase what I did here. I try to do it without the auto mask. It's kind of hard because, let me do it here. So plus is gonna take out exposure, and minus by pressing Alt is gonna erase the brush that I'm doing. So I could do a better job probably in Photoshop, but before, after, I really don't like that black that I did here. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna do it differently. I'm gonna use the auto mask option. Let's see how that works. Auto mask, and I'm gonna zoom in with the auto mask on, and I'm gonna lower the exposure and the highlights. With the auto mask on, the way it works is that as long as my plus is in the rock, it's not gonna go into the stars. So maybe this will give me a better job. Okay, and then as you get off inside of the rock, then you can turn off the auto mask, because now you don't need it, and just make this a bit darker. Actually, these lights were so strong that it just puts too much attention there. Okay, that did a better job. Let me take a big brush now and make this darker. I wanted some details, but not that much. Okay. All right. Okay, I think, all right, let me see. Let me add some white here, maybe a little bit, so he sticks out a bit more. Clarity is good. I think on this one, I'm going to use a brush again for the special brush for the Milky Way. So exposure, I'm going to boost the exposure, maybe add a bit of clarity. It's like going to the market. Bonjour, madame. I would like a little bit of exposure, a little bit of clarity, a little bit of yellow, and a little bit of magenta. And the strength is going to be around 60 or 70. Not much. Thank you, madame. And then you start brushing, and the miracles happens. Check this out. We really have the feeling that he's like lighting up the stars, like that. Okay. And then maybe, I think I would do a bit more in Photoshop on this, but I don't want to bother you another 10 minutes on that rock. I'm going to lower a little bit the top of the sky. So I'm going to go for exposure, minus out this exposure. Yeah. Add a bit of blue, a little bit of blue, and make this more for gradient. It's too harsh. Maybe a little bit higher up. Something like this. Yeah. Something like this. That rock still bothers me. It's still too bright. Because the first time I did it, what I did is I just made it darker in Photoshop so that we have less attention on it. And now, but it's okay. Let's see if I can do it in just, you can just add a brush on the top of brushes. So let's see if I can do it fast. I'm going to take a minus exposure. I'm going to make my flow and density strong. I'm going to go auto mask. I'm going to go for it for real here. And I'm just going to boom, like this. And press Alt because it went a little bit over. And just erase what I did here a little bit. My flow is too low. Flow is going to be the power of your eraser. Apparently it was a bit too low. Oh, see, now I'm getting back the lights on. Anyways, there is ways to do that in Photoshop, which actually I can show you right now. You know, sometimes there is Lightroom just doesn't cut it. You know, you have to go into Photoshop. So right click, edit in Adobe Photoshop CC 2015, and yeah, that really bothers me. I'm gonna duplicate the layer, and I'm gonna use the P for pen tool, okay, and or actually no, I'll show you another technique than the pen tool, which is really cool that my friend Calvin showed me. I usually use the pen tool to select things, but there is another way which I think is really cool. You take a brush and you make it like 85 pixels. Sorry, the hardness is 85%, and you make it really small, like something like this, like 20 or 15. What's important is that the hardness is 85%. Okay, make sure it's at 100 and black, and then you press Q to go into quick mask mode. This way, when I take the brush, when I brush, instead of doing some black, because I press Q for quick mask mode, I'm doing a selection, and anything which is red is being selected. If it's not the case, you can double click and just make sure on your quick mask option that selected areas, the color is red, and that it's not on mask areas, you want selected areas. Okay. Oh, let me go back into quick mask mode. So now I press once, hold on the shift key, and I just follow the rock. And the fact that my brush is at 85%, what happened is that it's a bit blurry on the edge. So it makes a selection which is a bit more precise than if I use the pen tool. Because by using the pen tool, I can always, you know, feather my selection. But per what he says, and he's been doing Photoshop for 20 years, he gets better selection, especially on sharp objects like this, using this technique of the brush at 85%. And I trust him. In Kelvin, I trust. He's an amazing Photoshop guru. He's the one that taught me Photoshop 10 years ago when I started into photography. I trust him. Okay, so voila. Just gonna make a selection like this. I don't really care here. Oops, sorry. See, when you hold on the shift key, it just makes lines where you are. And let's maybe finish it here. Oops. Yeah, that was a bit too long. So just make sure you press the shift key for this to work. And it makes you, you know, good selections. Okay. All right, so I've got this selected. Now I need to make sure it's closed. Okay, so now I need to fill this with something. So because I'm in the quick mask mode, I can go to my magic wand and click inside, and it's gonna, you see, it only sees the red dots. Okay, and then I'm gonna select modified and expand a little bit my selection of maybe 5 pixels. This way my selection is really into the reds. Okay, and then because black is the one that's going to select anything which I paint is in black is going to be selection. I'm going to go to edit, fill with black, and OK, and press Command D to unselect. Oh, here we are missing a little bit. So now we got a big selection here. I'm going to press Q to go out of the quick mask mode, and now I've got a very good selection of the rock. Okay, then I can go into my levels, for example. And it's going to create a level with this selected, and I can just play around, especially here. Anything which is white, I can make it much darker here. Something like this. I can lower the overall exposure. Something like this. Now you see it makes a weird line here, but that's fine because I'm on the mask. If I take a white brush this time, because you see anything which is white is going to make that level effect. White reveals the level, black conceal. So I'm going to take a white brush, and I'm painting on the mask. Make sure now the hardness is at 0, and maybe the opacity is like at 20%, 28%. I'm just going to paint here. So I'm bringing this levels value here, more on the rocks, and maybe here that's a bit too bright. Voila. Voila. Okay, let me show you the before and the after. Yeah, that rocks is a lot less visible. And voila, I'm gonna save and go back to Lightroom. So, okay, and I'm gonna give it a 2-star. So voila, that's one more photo. I'm gonna give you all these raw files from this experience so you can play around with them, and I hope you have fun. I hope you have a lot of fun, and you know, you go out there when it's the new moon and you shoot the stars. It's gonna be really cool. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in another episode.